Hi, my name is Jade, and this is How to App on iOS, and I hope you're doing okay. Today I'll be taking a look at Mass Midi Generator by Tom Ward at Usable Creations. So let's Oj! Mass Midi Generator is a physics-based MIDI generator crafted to inspire musicians across all genres, add complexity to your sequences, explore generative patterns, or create organic modulations. Mass is a gateway to boundless musical experimentation, part puzzle, part theory, and all totally fun, and a truly interesting way to create endless, evolving music. It is available on the App Store for $14.99 and works on all iOS devices. Now let's get down to checking out a really cool demo of Mass in action. Okay, so let's take a look at how this thing works. So I'm going to be mostly today working in AUM and using this, of course, as a MIDI generator because that's what it is. It can be used as a standalone as well and send MIDI clocks out, and you can control external hardware devices as well. So that's pretty cool. But we're going to open up a MIDI track here in AUM and an audio track just to kick things off. In here, we're going to put, let's put a piano tech, keep it nice and simple with a piano sound. We'll throw in an altether just for some nice reverb. And over here in our MIDI generator, we're going to do a search for Mass. There it is. And we firstly want to send this out to Piano Tech. Now let's take a look at how it all comes together. So it's quite a simple interface, but at the same time, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is kind of like puzzle solving, and this is not something you can just, well, you can create something super simple and have it generate some wonderful sounds. But if you really want to get serious and get mathematical, you can create some pretty intense stuff. Firstly, down the bottom, you'll see this little autosave feature down here. Now, I'm pretty sure if I click this, it'll autosave. It'll save it for you, what you're currently working on. It'll just make a quick autosave. We'll talk about that more. Now, to get started, all you need to do is read the instructions here. Tap once for controls. Best way to start off always is just tap once for controls, and down these controls come down the bottom. You can tap anywhere, and we're going to click on the little gear icon. This is where you choose your pitch, and we can choose from any note we want, and we have a selection of scales. Would be nice to have a few more scales in here. Maybe they can be added at a future time. We're just going to keep it at a C major. Now this is interesting. We can move this little range slider here. So as you can see, it's from C2 to C5, but we can extend it out and make it a little bit wider or bring it in nice and tight. So C2 to C3, we'll just leave it at C2 to C5 at this time. You can move it around wherever you like. And like anything in this app, you can move it around on the fly while you're creating things and while you're playing live, and it will just happen. It's very seamless. You've got links to the manual, some tutorials. There's 3 tutorials over on YouTube, and an email, a nice way to contact Tom if there's a problem, you find a bug, because we don't want you to leave a shitty review on the App Store because that stays forever. Contact the developer whenever there's a bug, or just to tell him you like the app. You know what I'm saying? So there we go. C major is what we've chosen here. Our next little folder down here, this is where we save our compositions. And that's what each piece of music is called. They are compositions. You have your own compositions. You can create your own folders up here like I have. Created my own folder. I've got a couple of demos in here. This show demo one was the one you just heard at the beginning of the show. If we go back, you can see there's some factory presets, some melodic stuff in here for you to listen to. We'll check them out as we go on. Also some modulations, because you can send this out and modulate things and do all that kind of stuff as well. It's quite deep. It really is very deep. And there's a few little demos just here. To save, you hit save, save as, give it a name, and to reset at any time, hit the reset button and it will clear everything out. So that's pretty much the file system here for saving stuff. You can also save in AUM if you'd like, hit the plus, and you can save these in AUM if you'd like. Just remember, they don't save in the app, just in AUM. Some people prefer that because they use AUM all the time, and that's good too. Once you've chosen your pitch and your scale, you're good to go. You can close out of this, and now we get to the next phase, which is double tap anywhere to add a new part. Now we're talking, these are compositions, and within compositions are parts. Parts are represented by a circle, a ball, like a pool ball. I look at this like it's a billiard table in a way. And I don't know, this is the way I just started playing with it. Now you notice once this first part is showing on your screen here, across the side you've got patterns. So each part has a pattern section with all of these trigger events and such, which we will cover. So if I just hit play now, what is going to happen? So we've got a sequencer over here. So our part has a pattern sequencer. It's currently running 4. It's locked to the BPM of our DAW, 120. And on the first note, it's playing a C because that's what we chose. Now at any time, you can move these around. Currently I have this set to, when you pull down on the Y-axis, we are controlling velocity. And you can see you get a representation of the note when you hold down, it shows there. It's showing that it is a C2, and you can see that velocity going down. As we move it along, each dot, you can see it changing here. So C to D, E, now you can even take your finger and flick it somewhere you want. It'll stop as soon as you flick. But in real time, you are able to control these notes. So we'll take it back to C for now. Okay, now that's pretty boring. We can also change the length of the sequence up to 32. So let me show you that. Just going to tap here at the end, and now we are in a 32 part sequence. I can change this to 5. Anything I like, I can just tap that circle wherever you want it to go. And of course we're running 8, 8, 8, 8 Or I can move the slider here, and you can see that moves the sequence length as well too. So if I move this to 1, so most people know how to use a sequencer. Pretty standard stuff there. Now I can also move where I want the note to play within the sequence by coming down here. Now we have 2 sections called assign and mutate. We'll come back to mutate. As you see, I moved this to number 2, 3. So now it's playing on the 3rd. And we have chance down here as well. So now it's going to play 50% of the time, it's going to play that note. And so for randomization and all of that stuff, let's talk about offset, because this is really exciting. We can change the offset of this, and they're counted by ticks. Now these are beats, and then you've got your usual 16ths, and you can see this kind of change. Now these little circles change to represent that 16th. Now you're really only going to hear this once we've got some more notes in there. But before we do that, let's talk about triggering events, because as we go down further, this event is being triggered because it's turned on. Now there are 3 types of events within a part and a pattern. Scroll down, you have wall and part collision. So 2 collision events, you can turn these on and off. And we have continuous events. Both these are off right now. We'll get to the XY pad soon. If I turn this off, the little part will go dark, meaning nothing's happening. It's not turned on. So now if we turn it on, it's going to start playing again. There we go. We will come back to control, transpose, and impulse shortly. Let's add another note, shall we? So I'm going to double tap, and you'll notice this now becomes part 2. Let's add in another one. Now that's pretty boring because they're all playing on the same note. This is where it gets exciting. So firstly, we can come in, and to flick through parts, we'll just turn this down for a minute. To flick through parts, you've got 2 ways. You can either click on the ball and you'll see it change over here, or we can swipe with our finger, with the mouse, swipe with my finger, show you here, through our parts just to the side. So let's move these. We'll move part 2 to position 3 or position 2, and we'll go 3 to position 4. So we're starting to get a little bit of a rhythm going on there. Well, let's change the offsets now. Let's go back to part 1, and we'll change the offset here to a 16th. Let's change number 2 to an 8th. And number 3 to 1/32. So we're starting to get some differences there. Let's change it to 11 ticks. But it's still not like doing anything too crazy. It's still keeping that same kind of rhythm going on. And just be aware, we have this set to notes at the moment. Our trigger event is notes. Also, let me just stop this for a moment. At any time in our trigger event, you can change, so as I explained at the beginning, you can go left and right for your notes and the y-axis up and down for velocity. You can change this at any time over here by clicking now, and you'll notice we've got higher notes up here on this particular pattern. So now when I move this up and down, so you've got the options there to change the X and Y axis. We can also lengthen these notes. So down below here you can see lengthen. Let's swipe between all three and lengthen them out a little bit. Take off some of that reverb. So let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's come back to, we're on part 1 at the moment, and let's change the length to 3. We'll change part 2 to 5, and we'll change part 3 to 7. So we're starting to see a bit of variation there. Now let's talk about mutate. So once we've assigned these, we can come in here and mutate these further. Now, me explaining this is going to be a little bit difficult. I can show you the help tutorial to try and understand a little bit more. But with mutate, we'll stick on, let's go with number 1 here, which is set for 3. When we click on mutate, we can actually change the position of these. So you see, as I turn this up to 1, it adds 2 within the pattern. So now when we hit play, and we can then offset that, give it a bit of chance. Now we're going to head over to the tutorial just for a moment, the manual. Mode mutating. Mutating the trigger offset will shift each subsequent beat's offset by the mutation amount. Here are those amounts. Example, trigger offset 0, trigger offset mutation equals 1. Beat 1 offset equals 0, beat 2 offset equals 1 tick, beat 3 equals 2 ticks, and beat 4 equals 1/32. So they're going up a step each time. When it's set to offset 2, it changes completely from 2 to 1/16. You'll see it graphically and hopefully understand it. Let's take this one here and try doing the same one. Well, actually, we'll take number 3 because it's got 7 steps. And it's added in, you can see, 4 of these. This is where you can really start building some Euclidean sounds here. We'll offset this. So now we're really not following too much of a pattern. This is getting pretty wild, and we haven't even started moving anything around. These are all stagnant. Let's stop it there. I'm going to add in another part now, And we're going to make this one do something called an impulse. So it doesn't really matter where I put this. We'll double tap, and I'm going to set this to, let's set it to 8 up here for our sequence. And we'll leave it at position 1, and we'll change this down here, the trigger, to impulse. And we can see here we've got a force line. Now this is kind of like putting a firecracker in the middle of the room. It's going to go off, and anything that's not anchored down is going to be pushed out and moved around. We're going to get some movement. And each time it hits this first beat out of the 8 in the sequence, it's going to do that. So firstly, before we do that, we've got it set at a force of 10. Well, let's make it 20. We're going to come back to this first one here, part 1, and I want to anchor this down. Let's talk about anchoring. So we have our physics here, and at any time I can push this circle. I'll show you in a minute, but I'm just going to show you how to anchor first. If we tap here and here, both the X and Y movement is disabled. So when anything touches now, this ball, nothing is going to move it. It is going to stay stagnant regardless. So let's see what happens when we hit play to this piece of music. So all this one here that's lit up is doing is forcing the others to move, while this one stays stationary. It's making no sound whatsoever. Let's stop it. It comes back to the beginning. Now this doesn't have to move because it's not making any sound, so it doesn't really matter. We can actually come into this one and turn off these as well. Cool. Let's hit play and see what happens. So immediately it exploded and sent these other two moving around. While we're live, let's drag this and take down the velocity a little bit. Now you heard the velocity come down. And remember, I can move this anytime I like while it's playing. Now let's stop it again and let's talk about this. So I might only want, say, this one here to move left and right when something triggers it to explode. Well, I can do that. Let's scroll down. So we'll select this one here, scroll across, and we'll turn off the up and down, the Y. So now when it gets triggered, watch what happens. It's just going to go from side to side no matter what. Not really hearing it, so I want it to come up. Let's bring it up a little bit. Now at any time with all of these parts, these balls, I always call them balls, it is what it is. With our physics, we can change the mass of these as well too. So we can bring this right down. So now it's smaller and it's not as heavy. So when it impacts something, it's not going to have as much force. We can also make the resistance longer, right, or shorter. Watch what happens. See how it's slowed down there and just stopped? Because the resistance was higher. Let's pull that resistance right down and see it's going for infinity now. It'll just keep going. So we can give it a little bit of resistance as well. So it's going to slow down. We'll continue focusing on part 3 at the moment, and scroll down a little further. And let's talk about wall collision events and part collision events. So again, we have these options: note, control, transpose, or impulse. Let's add a note. So each time it hits the wall, it plays a note, and each time it hits another part, it plays a note. It's probably a little bit too much, so let's take out the part collision, just to add a bit of randomness in there, and we can add some length to that too. And what's really cool is you can even just put something in there as like it doesn't do anything. It just is a stop. So I could put in a note here, and let's just not give it any kind of note, no trigger event, no nothing. We'll just sit it there, and we'll take away any movement from down here. So it's just a block. Then we can take this one over here, part 1, and we can give it some movement. Now let's talk about just setting some movement. With this little arrow, you can decide where you'd like it to go, forward and send it diagonally, whatever you'd like. But we're just going to turn on the x-axis and give it a little bit of short, not too wide, so it's only going to be slowish. So now when we hit play, and that's just going to keep bouncing back and forward between this little stopper here. Only when it's hit too, right? So the randomness of it being hit and the little explosions that are being sent out are keeping it moving. So we may not want it to go past a certain note. And I can move this. Remember, this one over here is just exploding on the first beat of every 8. Which is sending everything moving around. Pretty wild stuff, yeah? Hopefully you're following along. It's pretty cool. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom now and talk a little bit about continuous events. Now you can use these to send out MIDI to control, say, a filter or a whatever you like, resonance, whatever you'd like to actually control. It's very cool. So we won't do it with this. Let's open up something like let's just save this for now. We'll come back to it. Mass piano. Okay, let's try something completely different now. So I'm going to load up a MIDI channel. We're going to load Nerd Synth in here. Simple. And we'll add just a tether just for some reverb. Yeah, keep it nice and simple. And we'll come in here. We'll add Mass. And what I want to show you is using the Mass to not only control the notes of the synth, but also control some modulation. So we'll tap once. Come down here, let's choose like we'll do an F major, we're all good there. Let's close that, and we'll double tap here. Hit play, we'll come down here, we'll change the length of this. And we've got to connect it to Nerd Synth. We'll change this to one of the sounds in my preset packs. Cool. Now that's already kind of evolving, but let's get it evolving more. So how do we do this? We're going to go into Nerd Synth, go into the parameters, and we're going to add in here Mass. Sweet. Now we're going to come over to mass and we're going to add another part. Now it doesn't matter where this goes for now. Just put it here. I'm going to turn off the trigger event here, go down to the bottom and set a continuous event for a control. Now this is set to channel 1 MIDI and we'll choose 26 for the Y and we'll choose 27 for the X axis. And now we'll start this moving. So it's already moving. Now we want to come over here and find our cutoff. Turn this on. Let's just change this so our notes have started moving now because the balls have connected. And we're going to change our cutoff to 26 and on. And we'll change our resonance on and 27. And we should see we are now also modulating the resonance and the cutoff with just these two balls bouncing around. Whoa. So you really don't need a lot of parts to create something fascinating. But it helps. Now we could add in some piano in here in a third part. And how do we do that? Remember, with each of these parts, our trigger event, our wall and collision events, is our wall and yes, they all have MIDI channels. So we can send these to different instruments. So let's load up a different instrument. And we'll take this one. Let's stop that. So this is our new one here, our part 3. And I'm just going to, I don't know, well, let's make this go just left and right. In fact, let's for now just close it off so it can't be moved. We can set that to move any other time we like. And we'll set this to channel 2. And then we'll come over here to our piano tech and make this channel 2. We've got to connect it to our piano, don't we? Now we'll come down here and set this so it can only go, we'll bring that mass down. Bring our nerd synth back in. Let's go in here and mess about with our offset, and we'll mutate. So now setting this to 32 and mutating this, we'll change the resistance. So simple and just doing its thing. Let's turn on some wall collisions. So now we've got notes triggering, channel 2. Remember to change it to channel 2. Or you don't have to do that. So we're on part 3. This is our piano. We can have these part collisions trigger the other synth. So that collision there just triggered nerd synth, or we can change it to the piano. So it's going to hit this wall now and add that extra note in there. We can even do things like transposing. Let me show you a transpose. I'm going to put in another part here and I'm going to set this to transpose. But first, I'm going to turn off all the movement. So turn off the physics engine. I'm going to change the pattern to 16. And then what I'm going to do, before I set this up properly, is add another one. Change this to 16, move its note, its position to 9, turn off the physics. I'm going to move this down here. To an C4. And let's change these events to transpose. So now you can hear it transposing back and forward. Let's add some movement to this piano. Now with transpose trigger effects, you can decide how you'd like this to work. You can have the X axis or the y-axis, change the root, and you can actually add the scale, so it will go up a scale and from the list of scales, or keep this turned off. As you can see, there's a lot of madness to be had with this. It's pretty interesting to explain. I do recommend reading the manual. It's not too hard to read. Plus, there are 3 videos on Tom's channel to go and check out. Links in the description below. Now, if you want to delete any of these parts, there's a little bin icon up here. You can add parts by coming up here, and you can close this tray out and get a full screen this way. Let's shut this down for a moment. I mean, it's so wonderful. Yeah, let's go out here, clear this, and we'll open another little project that I've got open where nothing's really moving in this. Let's show you that. So we'll go over here to our files. This is a little Euclidean demo I made just with NerdSynth. Here is the setup. Let's hit play. Okay, so while this is going, let's add some chaos into this. We're going to add another part. And we're going to trigger this with an impulse. Every 8. And it sends everything off. We'll make sure it doesn't move. It can just sit in the top corner there. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I kind of put that together just to close out the show. It's definitely worth your time to buy this, spend some time experimenting with it, read the manual, but have fun creating music. That's what this is about. And I mean, there's so much potential for it to just create something, walk away and just let it do its thing. It's really, really generative and just a joy to play around with. And I probably haven't covered everything in here today, but that's okay. Not everything's perfect. So let's clear this out. We'll use the same effect, same instrument, and we'll load up Mass. We're going to send this over to Nerd, and let's go. So we'll choose our key first, and I don't know, let's do an E. We'll do E minor maybe. Yeah, let's do E minor. Why not? Or what about an E pentatonic? Why not? Something like that. Close out of this and let's go. So I want to create first a chord. So we're going to double tap and let's hit play. All right, now let's add in another note. That sounds nice. We'll add in another one. Nice. So let's go through them individually now and we'll change out the patterns here. Let's do 3 for the first one. For our second one, we'll do 7. And our third one, let's do 11. So we've already got some nice variation happening there. Now, for a bit of fun, we'll change the position of these. And we'll change the offset of this second one to an 8/8, 16th. Bring the chance down a little bit. Let's go into our third one here, and we'll do an offset of like and we'll add some mutation to this. With an offset. And now let's find something a little bit higher down here, and we'll add in some more notes. There we go. Now I'm going to make this one 32 steps. In fact, let's take this one back to 4, just so we can hear the chord ring. There we go. So we'll take all of these 3 and we'll make them 32 steps. And we'll leave that first note on 1, but this is where we're going to get crazy. We'll change our offsets a little bit. And now we'll go into all 3 of these and we'll mutate them. So you'll see you're getting these really full-on Euclidean mutations. Let's go to mutate. And our third one. Let's change the chants for these as well. And I think we need something low in there. So let's go up here. Let's make these 32 as well. And just change the position. So they're randomly popping up. Then I'm going to add one more in here. We're going to turn off this note for now. Add an impulse, make the force really low. And we'll turn off the physics here so it just sits still up in that top corner and just pushes things out. So now when we turn on this trigger event, we'll set it to go off on the 5th note of 16 and turn it on, and off it goes. Now if we stop that, it'll go back to its normal position. So let's come in here and we'll take these and we'll just turn off the physics for these. So we'll keep these main notes here, parts 1, 2, and 3. So only, and we'll keep these separate as well too. We'll go into these two as well and turn off the physics. It's really nice how you can just turn these off, and we'll make sure those are off. And then we'll make one of these, this one here, what is it, part 5? We'll give this a bit of vavoom down the bottom here. We'll give it some wall collisions. And give it some long notes there. And we should be good to go. Let's see how this plays out. Close this. I'll disappear. Let's hear how it sounds. Now remember, at any time, we can come in here and change the mass of these. So we can make this one a little bit heavier. This one a little bit lighter. Let's make the force of this a little bit more intense. So when it goes off on that 5th note, so you can see that lighter one is just flying around and the others are a bit heavier with a bit more resistance. Now, I'm sure there's things I haven't covered, but that's okay. There's always something for you to work out when you get hold of this app. Hopefully this has helped you decide on if this is something that interests you. Okay, let's go. Are you enjoying the content here on the channel? Please let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, please do me a solid and smash that like, hit that subscribe, and ring the bell to keep up with all of the latest app demos and live streams. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or even a Patreon and win some cool apps via the links below. So that is Mass Midi Generator by Tom Ward of Usable Creations. I think it's absolutely wonderful. The endless possibilities from simple creations to mind-bending puzzle-like monstrosities is totally worth the $14.99 price tag. It's available on the iOS App Store for all iOS devices. Okay, now let's get out of here for today. Remember, do the things that make you happy. Mistakes make you better, and we'll all rise together. Stay awake and let's OJ!